Hello and welcome. Thank you all for being here today. I am Nick Rohn, Executive Director for the Asset Leadership Network, and I am very excited for a conversation with ALN Executive Director Mike Bordenero and a cool pre-recorded program from our Australian colleagues, Peter Kohler and Sally Nugent. Jack Kelly was also in that program. So we will get to them in just a minute. But before we do, we want to thank our patron members, Jacobs, Onuma, Mantech, ABS Quality Evaluations, and CGI, as well as all our organizational members for making programming like this possible. And we do have some upcoming programs. Mike, do you want to talk a little more about what we have coming up?
Yes, thank you. In addition to next week's value and benefits from asset management special survey program, in November, we have a web federal asset leadership overview where we have the architect of the Capitol's enterprise asset manager is going to be part of the web program. The U.S. Government Accountability Office has agreed to present, and they've got a report from 2024 on asset management and a couple other reports that dovetail in with that. So that's really cool. In December, we're part of a presentation at the National Institute of Building Sciences event on digital twins. Um, and yeah, a lot of good things. January, we've got something with the Government Finance Officers Association on asset management policy. Denver Transportation and Infrastructure has written a policy. The ALN helped guide them towards that, and they're going to be presenting on that as part of a bigger thing that reaches out to 22,000 members of the Government Finance Officers Association. And then on Monday, we are privileged to be presenting to the Korean Asset Management Corporate Organization, which is a quasi-government organization from South Korea that does financing and helps non-performing loans on housing, commercial, industrial properties, gets them straight, and then puts them back into the uh, capital markets. And they do a lot of other things, but they're meeting with federal agencies, and they ask the Asset Leadership Network. And we're a network, it's not us. So we reached out to our colleagues at the DC government and the Office of the Chief Financial Officer. So they're going to be presenting on what they did as a financial organization to help get their assets in line. And that's what helped them increase their bond rating and reduce their interest rates by $100 million over 10 years. And that's changed since the original numbers, but it's easy math to say it's a lot of money that getting your ducks in a row with asset management helps your financial outcomes. So that's Monday morning in the DC City Hall office building of the mayor. So a lot of things going on. So like Nick said, we couldn't do any of this without the support of our member organizations. Please join. And now we get to talk about the exciting activities that we're doing with the Asset Management Council. We're a network, we're always working with other organizations. And it was Peter Kohler and Sally Nugent's idea to do a survey. They call it a sentiment survey at how people are feeling asset management is helping their organization, but more importantly, their country. And I'm going to give a little sneak preview of some of the things. We don't want to give it all away, but I do want to give people an idea of what the survey is about. And Sally sent me the PowerPoint, so we got some of it set up. Is that sharing?
Soon, I see. Yep. Okay, see it now.
Okay, so let's go to slideshow, make this a little bigger. So just, a few questions. The impact on your financial value, the societal income outcomes, the impact on culture, organizational leadership, impact on asset management, and then it's segmented. Sally's doing a great job of making the survey understandable. And so this is respondents by source. So we'll be presenting that information and then just the overall survey results, organizational leadership impact on asset management, negative impact. So we got more work to do. Thank you to Peter Kohler and Sally Nugent. They were both part of the founding of the Asset Management Council. And Peter and Sally, want to give a little introduction about yourselves?
I'll go first. Yes, Peter Kohler. Happy to be here, of course. Happy to talk about the subject of asset management. And yes, Sally and I were involved with a number of other people, to be fair, of the creation of the Asset Management Council and within Australia and so on. My background, very briefly, is military, Navy for many years, and then in private business in the asset management industry in Australia as well. Um, So very passionate about the subject of asset management, and very passionate about the idea that it can make a difference to society. So the whole reason this value and benefits webinar series was created was to extol the virtues, hopefully, of asset management by creating and delivering a whole bunch of stories from industry of how well asset managers performed, and that leads positively towards the idea of, well, it might well be that 20 or 30 people think it's made a significant difference to their company, to their community. But overall, what has the asset management impact been in Australia? And so excitingly, we're going to talk about those sorts of things shortly. Sally.
Rust is my background. From the time when I was finishing my engineering degree and someone says there are great careers in corrosion, and I thought, sounds really interesting. So you could say I've been in asset management all my career, because that's where I started with a mining and manufacturing organisation, 10th largest in Australia. And then I wanted to make more of a difference, I suppose. So I moved into not-for-profit management with the Corrosion Association, and then, of course, shaping the Asset Management Council. And I've got to say, I've had an amazing career and a blast. It's the 45th or 46th or 47th year of my career. And I'm still doing things, which is insane. I do apologize for not showing me. I'm not quite so well, so you're better off with a black screen and a white words. Anyway, that's me.
And Jack Kelly is joining us. Jack, it was the one who extolled the virtues of Peter and Sally and said, Michael, you have to connect with these people. And I was so glad we did. Jack, thanks for joining us.
You're welcome. Good to be with you. I'm in distinguished company and glad to be here.
And Jack has been a guest on the ALN, ALN and AMC Values and Benefits from Asset Management web program, which Peter, Sally, and I started. Jack has been involved in it also, to provide case studies. Success stories is the term that was insisted upon, and that's been going good. We've got more than a dozen of those case study web programs, and it occurred to us that we should do a survey, as Peter said, about the impact of asset management. And Sally has turned out to be quite the expert at surveys. I did not understand that. Peter and Sally, you want to talk about some of the things you were looking to do with this sentiment survey?
When I was a member of the Company Directors of Australia, they used to run an annual sentiment survey. And when we got asked about how well Australia had implemented asset management, I thought, well, first off, we never ask ourselves that question. We just assume it's going well. And second off, it would be really good to have some at least qualitative information which showed us how asset management was really impacting. And that's where the survey got born. We based the questions at a high level on the principles of asset management, largely, as they're given in ISO 55000. And then we asked a few questions about the respondents to understand a bit about them as well. I think it's been a really interesting exercise. it showed us that we had had a few inherent biases in the way we asked the questions. One of which would be that we generally view asset management as a business tool, not as a technical tool. But not all the respondents felt that way. Anyway, that's enough, I think.
So we're having this program because there's going to be a full hour discussion on the survey results from Australia, which will go first, and then the survey results from the US, and Jack Kelly will be joining us in discussing the implications of those survey results. And what we wanted to do is ask everyone to participate in the survey if they haven't already, and then put on their calendar in the US October 23rd at 5 p.m. Some of the survey results. We don't want to do the whole set of surveys because that's for the full hour, but there's enough information that we can provide a little bit of insight now to help people understand what will be discussed. The thing that we all agreed upon in terms of setting up the survey is that it had to be short. So there are just 10 questions. You can do it in less than 5 minutes if you just click through it, but there's also the opportunity for adding comments. And what was the sustainable or the organizational leadership impact on asset management, the asset management impact on culture, impact on risk management. And what we're going to talk a little bit more about, asset management impact on accountability and decision making, but you can see we have a few others. And there were 5 responses that we provided: a negative impact, no impact, too soon to say, some positive impact, and significant positive impact. And what you're looking at is the overall results, and among the most positive are the impact on accountability and decision making. So Sally and Peter, if you want to have a go at why you think that that was the most positive, one of the most positive responses we had.
I'll start by saying I was surprised actually that it came out as positively as it did. And I'm still a bit surprised as to why that is. Peter, what do you think?
First of all, before we talk about specifics, what I am very surprised about is the number of negative comments. I'll be brutally honest with you. I look at that and go, that's really interesting. So has the ISO standard made a positive impact? I think the answer is yes. Has it made a negative impact? Probably yes as well. So we need to understand a lot more about the negative impact before we talk about the positive, possibly, but that may be just my bias. But coming back to this direct question, which is accountability, one of the things that the ISO standard does talk about is this notion, if it doesn't talk about it directly, it certainly implies it, that it's got to have clarity about who does what and why and when. So maybe that message has been well and truly received and implemented, which is a good thing. But certainly, being involved as most of us on this screen have been too, in developing the ISO standard, if not the second one, then certainly the first version, the 2015 version. This issue of accountability and decision making was very much in the forefront. So was risk, and you can't have one without the other there, by the way. So I'm very pleased to see that the impact on accountability decision making and the impact on risk is positive as well. That would have been very confusing to me had one been positive and the other one been negative, to be honest. So there seems to be a logical relationship there. So that's my quick answer to the question of my perception on the why question you asked, Mike. Sally?
Yes, I think that makes sense. And when, of course, as you'll hear next week at the full webinar, we talk a bit more about the state government and national government efforts in Australia. to use asset management, and that's coming from often in this country from Treasury departments in the different states, and the emphasis from the Treasury departments that there should be accountability. And so what you're really seeing, I think, is partly also, it's not just use of the standard, is it? It's actually driving a requirement for accountability from state governments and from organisations. And so that's what you're seeing as a more positive sentiment in those areas. Yeah. And I think that's why Mike's put this slide up for us. This is actually looking at the overall sentiment from the source, if you like, of the respondents for Australia. And the middle bar is a small group of asset management leaders and thinkers. So they're very engaged in asset management. They've got a very positive view, and you're seeing that result there. On the left is a Victorian state government representation. And again, there's been a concerted effort over, how many years is it now? About 7, I think.
Yeah, we're close to 10. We're close to 10, yeah.
The 8,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and so they've been leading an effort, and so you're seeing the results of that effort that has been led by the Victorian state government on the attitude and the opinion of people in that organisation. And then, of course, you come to the open survey showing that there's a much wider range of opinion about the value of asset management, the value that it delivers.
Can you explain the numbering system?
Oh, it's just a rating. It's probably better not to put it on there, to be honest. And so it was weighting each of the responses, right? So if it was a very negative response, it got a high negative rating, and it went all the way through, and then averaging per number of participants. Just a simple statistical analysis.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think one of the great stories that our survey shows, although it's not obvious, when we talk about the state government, Victorian state government, I know that's the figures on the screen here do kind of relate to just Victoria only, and the longevity of the whole program. That is replicated in nearly all states of Australia. And the other thing, that sounds kind of cool, but it's even cooler when you think it also has survived different left and right leanings of government as well. So you have, 1 year you might have a Liberal government, one election cycle, a Liberal government, next one a Labor government, theoretically right and left leaning, but asset management has survived those changes as well. So what this story shows is that there's a significant acceptance in the Australian community and Australian political leadership of the value of asset management, whether that's been replicated, whether that's manifested itself in changes to society. That's another question. But you understand what I'm saying is that I view this as what's on the screen here in relation to state government as a positive, very positive story. Has survived many changes of government. The emphasis on asset management at both federal and state level. All around Australia.
Jack Kelly, perhaps that's a good segue to you. And we're not revealing the US statistics until next week, but what's your personal sentiment on?
First of all, my eye went to exactly the same thing that Peter's eye went to, and that is a surprising number of negative sentiments, which totally surprised me. And I absolutely agree with Peter that this is something we need to understand in much greater detail, because that would tell us something important. I think it certainly surprises me. As people who have heard me talk about Australia before know, I consider Australia the crown jewel of asset management practitioners. I mean, they have they're so far much further ahead of certainly the US, but also pretty much any other country. Australia is the only country that has developed as a nation a national infrastructure plan, and 2 of its largest states, maybe more now, but at least 2 of its largest states have developed state infrastructure plans. And for people who aren't familiar with the mechanics of this, those are daunting tasks. Bringing together people from across all of those sectors in a way that allows them to balance off, sector importance and sector resources and sector risk and all of that kind of stuff. That's like playing 12-dimensional chess. It's really, really, really powerful. And so Australia comes at this with a much longer standing and a much deeper understanding of asset management than anybody else I know about.
Okay. Can I add to something there that I was yesterday I was watching something on YouTube. Now you got to be careful watching stuff on YouTube. I do agree, right? And it was about the countries and how well they've done financially and economically over the last 15 to 20 to 30 years, and they were talking eloquently about. I won't say who it is who was talking, but eloquently about Australia, how Australia's economic prosperity has gone up. Including downturns in the last 25 to 30 years. Now, I'm not saying that's directly related to asset management either, by the way, but it is related to what Jack's talking about the infrastructure plans, and those sorts of things. It's that culture, I guess, of we have to come together to solve the problem.
It is asset management, Peter, because what Jack was talking about was asset management. So I know you're hesitant.
I'm not gonna lay it at the altar of asset management, right? That's really dumb, because that's not the only thing happening in the world. But the infrastructure stuff that Jack talks about and the other things are positive signs of a positive culture, actually. Yeah, working together.
What asset management does is provide a tool for collaboration, and it is clear in the US that asset management is a bipartisan issue. Everyone says, yes, I'm all in support of it as soon as they hear about it. And if you're able to use asset management to collaborate to address that hard work that Jack Kelly was mentioning, it's not at the altar of asset management, but asset management enables the human behaviors that are mutually beneficial.
I would go further than that. I'd say that it really, in a way, it requires those behaviors. I mean, to be successful, you have to behave in the ways that asset management lays out. I mean, it's just a kind of a, I love the word roadmap. It's kind of a way to lay out a roadmap to achieve your results. And in doing so, to balance all of those things, availability of resources, risks, all the moving parts that you have to coordinate and look at in a holistic way are what asset management helps you do that.
Yeah, so asset management is a great business tool. I do think that the behavior, leadership, and culture that you need for asset management to succeed is an overarching thing, and that's both a business decision on how your organization's culture is, and it's a national decision, right? You actually need good behaviors, etc., to drive it. I think I'd put it the other way. Asset management doesn't drive good behavior. Good behavior drives asset management, would be my take. And I've got to say, I'm really surprised that you were surprised about some negative ratings about asset management. That surprises me, because no one loves everything, right? That's normal. And there is something about ISO 55001. And with some justification in some areas, and that's partly a leadership role, and it's partly a cultural role. So, but anyway, that goes back to my comment about which leads which.
Yeah, I do want to say that it's kind of relevant to this discussion. Sally and I are delivering a course or workshop on Wednesday talking about asset management leadership. Would you believe? So and leadership and culture, and developing the right culture. If you don't develop the right culture in your organization, asset management can't work. So it's this story of leadership and culture is, as long as there's human beings, that story will continue. Of having to think about the right culture, what type of leadership, how do you lead, those sorts of things. You have to think about those things. Yeah. because they are the keys to success. Yes, some of the keys to success, primary keys to success. Yeah.
Well, it's a real pleasure for me to be able to work with all of you. You are all excellent leaders. You are all thoughtful and kind and are working towards a greater good. And it's clear in all the communications I have with you. And I really appreciate this values and benefits from asset management web series journey that we've been on together. And I'm very happy that it resulted very logically in this survey. And we'll be talking a little bit more about the survey amongst ourselves in the discussion that follows. And then please, everyone, join us next week when we'll have a full hour and have question and answers with the audience to try to tease out some interesting sentiments or insights on why there's negative and positive results.
Well, yes, overwhelmingly it's positive, but as I said before, there's some interesting negatives there too. If you're going to change anything, there's always someone that loses. When you try and change things, so perhaps it's not too surprising there's the negatives here and there. But moreover, in terms of the value and benefits webinar, we are going to be talking about the details of all of those, all the characteristics and all the scores. We've only just talked about one or two today, and they may be interesting, but I suspect there's a lot of interesting things to talk about. I don't suspect, I know there's going to be lots of things to talk about, interesting to talk about in the webinar coming up next week. So yes, and we encourage everyone to participate in not just to listen, but also ask questions at the end. We do have a very good question and answer session afterwards, after every program, and moderated by Sally here, who does an excellent job of doing that. Whether you ask questions by text or some other way, Sally sorts all that out, and the team gets to answer those questions. And so you can get involved in that webinar very, very well. It's not just a passive webinar. There's a whole bunch. The hour afterwards of question and answers is well worth participating in. From my perspective, it's well worth participating in, let alone everyone else. Yes, because the questions are the key. The questions will always make it interesting.
And we hope that Sally is feeling better next week.
I sure do.
So does she. Yes.
So thank you, Sally and Peter, for joining us from Australia. And Jack, thanks for joining us from Washington, D.C. And we'll have more information for you following this recording and next week in the live webinar. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye-bye. Look forward to it all.
Well, thank you, Susan, for the comment that it was good to hear from Peter and Sally. I'm glad we did it this way so that we can expose the people on this side of the world to their excellent leadership thinking. And Susan, if you would like to, we can make you a panelist. We've got other people from Canada. We've got people from New Zealand. Please send a chat to let us know if you're interested. If you're from the US or anybody who wants to talk, we can open this up. The thing we want to emphasize is to take the survey, and I got that back up there in the chat, and to put that on your schedule next week. You can register to be there 5 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday. And a little bit more about the international nature of this, we specifically put a country field so we can use this for other people can use this and get an understanding of what's going on in their countries. We can start comparing countries to encourage more and more asset management. We really think that this is a great thing for everyone, and I believe the survey is going to be helpful that. So, Nick, what did you think of the presentation?
Oh, it was awesome. I always love hearing from Sally and Peter. And I thought it interesting how they were all very interested and focused on the negative responses and kind of figuring out where that was coming from. And I find it not that surprising. I think maybe Sally said, everyone does, no one likes everything. And I was seeing it more as asset management. To do it right in an organization, it does take, that top leadership sponsorship. It takes implementation on, management and, on the floor level. And it just takes this more holistic effort. It takes a lot of communication of why people are having to go through different processes, and I think that's all really, really challenging stuff. I think the other big point listening for me was that the focus on human behavior. And as we're finding, the engineering is really solid, and humans don't respond well to trying to be engineered. So you have to come at it from a slightly different, value proposition of why people need to be, taking this seriously, even, if kind of the motions of asset management at various levels aren't that exciting. They're more kind of like discipline. I'm even thinking about professional athletes. What makes them great is them showing up every day and doing it to the best of their ability, not that they just once occasionally have a crazy idea or make an amazing play. It's that disciplined, focused line of sight. Maybe they can see how the day to day relates to the whole, the big picture. So that's what I got.
Excellent. Thank you. It's the leadership's job to point out to everyone the benefits that they get from the discipline, to coach them along, to use your analogy a little further. Marty, thank you for your interest.
Yeah. I thought the survey was interesting. So it's encouraging that they plan to go back and look at some of the reasons why certain results came out the way they did. So what I noticed was the top one that had to do with leadership, and it's the one that had the most negatives and had the least amount of significance. So I suppose it could be the case that people in leadership positions didn't want to be bothered by people probing their responsibility or something.
That's a good angle. And one of the things that we have learned is that asset management is advocated by managers, and they're trying to get leaders to buy into this really good idea that they're seeing. And if they can't get their leadership to buy into it, that's where the negative would come from. And
that's probably true.
that's another way of looking at it.
I'll never forget my experience at Lockheed Martin in New Orleans, where I was working for it was a NASA facility. And, we had two disasters with Challenger and Columbia. And each time we went into a deep dive of, what was the problem, all that. And that was during the time when ISO 14000 came out, and I was trying to interest, my supervisor and other managers and, management systems. And the word back from the supervisor was, we've got bigger fish to fry with this accident investigation. We can't be bothered by improving our environmental performance. I mean, I kind of understand what they're talking about, because without an article to fly in space, then we're not making any money and everybody gets laid off, I suppose. But I think in asset management, I think we can do both. I mean, my job was to do environmental compliance. So while everybody's trying to get the product safe, we can do our job better. So it was kind of like a false answer, and I guess it was just that people are just so focused on the investigation. So
I think it's a typical answer.
yeah.
And what I'm seeing, and I can't say that this is an asset leadership network perspective, is that the human tools have evolved. And it's almost a curve, a steep hockey stick curve. Human behavior is kind of flatlining. And what we need to do is use the tools to lower a hook down to the human behavior line and bend it up to
Mhm.
how the tools are improving.
Mhm.
Mike, I've heard you mention these two graphs kind of that we wish were a little more similar in improving fastly. And I wonder if, the tools humanity created in large were to try and bypass various challenging aspects of human behavior rather than tools being built to, lift up humans and their behavior.
So technology, that is exactly right with the mechanical tools, industrial tools. Well, ISO 55000 is a tool, and we are helping people understand that it is a human behavior tool. It is a culture tool, and it's driven by leadership. So I think we're part of that lift to bend the human behavior tool up to the way that the technology tool is moving.
Mhm. I think there's a role for AI, and I don't like to push AI too much because it kind of possibly puts everybody out of a job. But I think as long as we can use it to enhance, like if somebody uses AI and they increase their performance and nobody asks them, well, where'd you get that great idea? They would admit that AI helped me along. Like ask AI a question like, we all know that humans are challenged. They're at times they're lazy, they're slow thinkers. Then AI would say, well, if you had a brain like me, you'd do, X, Y, and Z, you'd do the 55,000 and all this. So I think there are opportunities to bend that curve through AI. And I think it's through careful asking of questions. I've got a friend of mine that I'm going to be seeing in an hour or so, but he's used Chat GPT, and he finds that he has to keep on refining questions because there's a bias within Chat GPT, and it always comes back to certain assumptions that he never really asked. So
Well, yeah, we'll have a, a discussion on that too.
right.
Yeah, fire is a tool. It
Yeah.
can cook your food, it can warm your house, and it can burn your city down. You got to use it properly. Just having the tool isn't enough. A power saw will cut your fingers off a lot faster than a handsaw. So, does that mean you don't use power saws? Maybe. It's going to be different for everyone. Anyhow, thank you to everyone for your interest in this program about the survey. I hope you got a little bit of information about how there's a sentiment for generally, good improvement in organizations and countries with asset management, but clearly there's areas that we can focus on and improving. And I am fine with leadership being one of the areas that we need to improve. And thank you, John. And thank you to everyone who attended. And Nick, Marty, thanks for joining us. And we'll see you Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern. I think I, provided that link enough.
Yeah.
And
So Wednesday, not Thursday.
we'll be on it Thursday at 3 next
Oh.
week. That we'll still be doing that. I'll be in Washington, D.C. So we'll be doing it with a Washington, D.C. angle. And the survey program is at 5 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday because it's the biggest program for Australia and for the Asset Management Council. And it's on a Thursday morning at 8 a.m. And that's always the case. So it's always our Wednesday night. And when there's zone changes, what's it called when you go to
Time zone?
National Dateline. Yeah.
No, it's every fall and spring equinoxes. We do the
Jump forward, jump back.
yeah, what's that called?
Daylight savings.
Thank you so much.
Oh, okay.
When daylight savings occurs, it changes on our side, but it doesn't change for them because they're on Thursday at 8 a.m. and they get hundreds of people attending. So it's like, yeah, don't mess with their time. That's
Yeah.
fine. So for us, it's Wednesday. This is a daylight savings time where it's now 5 p.m. In the summer, it's 6 p.m. But next Wednesday, 5 p.m. I think I've beaten that horse enough.
Yeah.
And can't beat the horse of thanks enough. Really appreciate everybody's involvement and support. And we'll see you next week.
Yep.
Bye.